Hello and welcome to another Timeless video. Today we're checking out this mono-red prison deck, which tries to punish the greedier strategies in the format and tries to lock the opponent out of the game, especially now with the addition of Chrome Mox into the format. All decks have sped up by a turn, since they all have access to this 0-mana artifact. When it enters, you can exile a non-artifact and non-land card from your hand, and then this will tap for 1 mana of any of the exiled cards' colors. So you're not going to want to exile a colorless Eldrazi with it, because Chrome Mox cannot make colorless mana, but exiling a red card is good enough in this deck, so we can potentially cast a turn 1 Chalice of the Void for X=1, and that's our first prison element, as we can prevent the opponent from resolving any more 1-drops for the rest of the game, and that's also the reason why we're not playing any 1-drops like Ragavan or Selves, because the plan is to put a Chalice on X=1. And then another way we can cast a Chalice on turn 1, besides Chrome Mox imprinting red cards, is Ugin's Labyrinth imprinting a colorless card from our hand with mana value 7 or greater, so it can tap for double colorless, and then later in the game we can also maybe get the exiled card back into our hand if we want to try and hardcast it once we've built up more mana. And then Ugin's Labyrinth and Chrome Mox are also great at setting up some of our 3-drops on turn 1 potentially if we draw both, or more realistically on turn 2, and those include Blood Moon to turn all non-basic lands into mountains, very good at punishing some of the mana bases that rely on lots of different colors, or that rely on fetch lands to get their colors sorted, because now all those fetch lands are just turned into mountains. Now this can be a little bit of a nombo with our own Ugin's Labyrinth, but that's the cost of doing business. We don't have access to some of the other lands that produce 2 mana like we have in older formats like Legacy or Vintage, no Ancient Tomb, no City of Traders, which are of course incredibly powerful lands as well. And then we also have a Stone Rain to maybe blow up the opponent's only basic lands after they maybe fetch them up to play around Blood Moon, and this land destruction can also happen very early on in the game to try and lock the opponent out of casting any more spells. And then a Fable of the Mirrorbreaker is also a good one to play early, as the Shaman token can give us a nice mana advantage, and then we can also maybe discard additional copies of Blood Moon or Chrome Mox that we no longer need. And then Goblin Rabblemaster is one of the better ways to close out the game where the opponent's unable to cast any spells, as it will quickly amass an army of Goblin tokens, getting pumped for each attacking Goblin as well if it attacks. And then the Rabblemaster also has nice synergy with the various goblins we get from Fable of the Mirrorbreaker, and then eventually the Reflection of Kiki-Jiki, also very powerful alongside Fury, which we can evoke early in the game by just pitching a red card from our hand to deal 4 damage divided as we choose among any number of target creatures and our planeswalkers, so that's the only real removal spell we have in the deck to deal with stuff that's already in play. And then later we can also hardcast it for 5 mana to also get the 3/3 double strike effect, but copying it with our Reflection of Kiki-Jiki also will deal 4 damage once again. And then we also need enough expensive colorless cards to imprint with our Ugin's Labyrinth, and that's where Devourer of Destiny will come in handy. Just good to have in your opening hand in general, as you get to reveal it, and then at the beginning of your upkeep you get to look at the top 4 cards of your library, and then choose one to keep on top and exile the rest. And then there's a Skitterbeam Battalion, which we can more realistically cast for 5 mana thanks to its prototype form, making 3 2/2 creatures with haste basically, and then it still counts as an expensive card we can pitch to our Labyrinth. Now it's not a red card, so we won't be able to imprint it with Chrome Mox successfully, and it's not a card we can pitch to Fury, but still a good enough win condition once the opponent's unable to cast many of their spells. And finally Harrogast, the Eldrazi Dragon, we can also realistically get in play thanks to the Emerge. If we sacrificed, let's say, a Fury, then it doesn't cost too much mana to actually emerge Harrogast. Same if we sacrifice a Goblin Rabblemaster, maybe if it's unable to attack. And then it also lets us draw additional cards. And then finally the mana base is pretty special, since we do need a high density of red cards so that we can pitch them to Fury and Chrome Mox. So we don't just want to play a bunch of mountains, because those don't count. So instead we're playing all of these lands that are spells on the front side, and then lands on the back that enter untapped at the cost of 3 life. Smashing can also be a removal spell. The Monk we're not casting very often, but the Sundering Eruption I've actually found quite useful in the current metagame, since there's a lot of Goblin Charbelcher decks that don't actually play any basic lands by design, so then Eruption is just as good as a Stone Rain, if not better, because it also prevents the opponent's creatures from blocking. And then we have a Crucible that can be channeled to make some 1/1s, couple Mountains, and a Den of the Bugbear can also be a solid win condition that synergizes with our Goblin Rabblemaster. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw. We've got Crow Mox to set up turn 2 Blood Moon or Stone Rain. So yeah, gotta keep. Facing a mill deck, alright. So no real reason to do anything at the moment. Could have also played Smashing Tapped, but might want it for later. As our opponent plays double Ruin Crab with a fetch land. So, problem now with playing Blood Moon is that our opponent's gonna fetch a basic. Chalice would have been nice a turn sooner. So definitely start with a Crow Mox. Pitching probably the Eruption. Although, yeah, how many basics does our opponent have? Maybe I'm still better off pitching the Smashing. And then I could play Chalice on one, but I think I would rather get Blood Moon going. And then next turn we can maybe Stone Rain their basic. Although the Rune Crabs are still pretty scary, even with the Blood Moon in play. Don't think I need to play Chalice on 0. But at least now the fetch lands are shut down. And a Mesmeric Orb, alright, that can still mill me. Fury's excellent, so that can deal with one of the crabs. Although we might be able to hardcast it next turn, for now just Stone Rain the island. And I don't think I want to cast the Eruption, because it also would trigger the Rune Crabs. So their opponent just has to pass. Now just relying on Mesmeric Orb. And yeah, we'll just cast Fury. Take out a crab. And this is our win condition. Now I still want to eventually play Chalice, probably on 1. Although playing it on 2 could stop another Mesmeric Orb. But yeah, Blood Moon's doing a lot of work. Can also fire up Den of the Bugbear now. Although I guess, never mind, it's just a mountain because of Rome Blood Moon, so... 14 cards left, so I probably don't want to tap anything else besides Fury now. Could still cast Chalice for 0, but I don't think there's any 0 drops in the mill deck outside of their own Crow Mox, which I guess we can stop by playing this on 0. So they won't be able to cast any of their spells on the off chance that they are running Crow Mox as well. They're pretty far from a Hideous Laughter. Archive Trap could still be in their hand, so we definitely don't want to search if we can help it. And then Fury should end the game before we get milled out. Although it's going to be close if they hit some more lands with a Ruin Crab. Don't really want to Smashing to get rid of it, because then we have to tap a bunch of lands. But we can maybe do it next turn just to clear a path. So opponent mills for 3. We'll mill for 2. They're still on all mountains. So, are there any free spells I need to worry about? Not that I can really think of. Yeah, I guess we can go for Smashing to clear a path. Even if they have the counter spell that makes them sack a creature, they wouldn't have Crab as a blocker left. So either way, Fury would attack for lethal. And our opponent explodes. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and we could cast a turn 1 Chalice, Although we could also go for a turn 1 Blood Moon with double Crow Mox, which is kind of crazy. I think turn 1 Chalice, turn 2 Blood Moon is good enough. But yeah, definitely keeping. Still will eventually need a win condition. So Crow Mox, pitch a red card. And then play Chalice on 1. And then I can hang on to Crow Mox. So all the opponent's 1-drops now get countered. And our opponent might be on a Charbelcher combo deck. So Blood Moon can shut down their colored mana. But we won't be able to stop Charbelcher itself if they draw it, since that's just an artifact that our opponent can still cast. So we would like to find some of our win conditions, like a Rebel Master would be great. Alright, opponent's gonna grief us, so that still works. So I guess that's gonna take the Blood Moon now. But they won't be able to reanimate grief. Sacrifice just gets countered here. So that probably wasn't to play. Otherwise they would have been able to make 4 mana here, sacrificing the grief. So this may not be a Charbelcher deck necessarily. Right, they still have a Crow Mox. Could also just be the mono-black Nightmare deck. And yeah, a Ritual doesn't do anything with Chalice in play. So turn 1 Chalice did some work. But sadly we don't get Blood Moon. Can still Fury. This is actually tough, because if I play this as a land, I won't have the option to Fury later. But I think we just try and hit our land drop so we can actually cast Fury instead. Keep Crow Mox in hand, since we also might be able to discard it with Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Sundering Eruption could actually be pretty strong if our opponent is on a Charbelcher deck, because then this is just straight up land destruction. So if our opponent's last 2 cards contain Charbelcher, that would be the play. If they are just a mono-black deck of some sorts, then Sundering Eruption's not all that amazing. Yeah, the fact that they play 2 of these makes me think that they might still be on Charbelcher. So I'll try this. And yeah, opponent doesn't find a land, so Charbelcher confirmed. Skitter Beam's gonna have to wait. Although I might cast it next turn, pitching Fury to the Crow Mox as we draw another one. So not a lot happening, but that's also thanks to the Chalice. Alright, so now I can Crow Mox, pitch Fury. Play this as a land, even though removing the opponent's land once again is tempting. But we can start closing out the game now. Hit you for 6, next turn hit you for 12. And yeah, that's Monored Prison in a nutshell. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have turn 1 Chalice, turn 2 Blood Moon, or Stone Rain, up against the Lurrus deck. So they could have a discard spell before I resolve Chalice, since we're on the draw. And my hand might be good enough here where I don't need to reveal my Eldrazi to keep Labyrinth as more of a surprise. Otherwise they might be more inclined to play a turn 1 discard spell. So what's their turn 1 play? Ragavan would also be pretty effective. A Guide of Souls, that's fine. Alright, so we'll start with Chalice. And at this point, still get rid of Devourer, since it's more realistic to emerge our dragon. Chalice on 1. Should shut down a pretty big chunk of the opponent's deck. And then Blood Moon hopefully does the rest. Take 1. And yeah, definitely gonna Blood Moon here before our opponent can cast an Ajani. So they can still cast their red spells. Bombardment, one of them. But I like a Rabble Master now. I guess Blood Moon did shut down my own Labyrinth, so now it doesn't make additional mana anymore. But that's the cost of doing business. Hit you for 1. Fury is less exciting with a Goblin Bombardment in play. Amped Raptor can still maybe cast a 2-drop for free here. And what did they hit? Surgical Extraction. Doesn't do much with Chalice. So they should keep their energy. So they can maybe grow the Guide of Souls. It's not nerfed and timeless like it is in Historic and Brawl. Alright, so cannot quite cast Fury, but we can pitch it, just so we clear a path for Rabble Master. Yeah, it's a little bit of an awkward turn here. Or I could just Stone Rain, although that only stops additional copies of Amped Raptor. And then I wouldn't be able to put Fury in play anymore until we draw another red card. So, yeah, maybe it is just a Stone Rain turn and get in with our goblins since we have to. And then keep Rabble Master also to maybe emerge Harrigast at some point. As we draw another one. Alright, so we can't do anything here. Our opponent could always decide to sack both creatures to take out my Rabble Master, but I don't see that happening. So we're trading 3 damage for 1 damage. Alright, Smashing, I don't think we're using as removal. Is it time to pitch Fury just to answer a Guide of Souls? That's an option. Or I can just be patient, hope to hit another land drop. And then I can just hardcast Fury, which would be a lot better for me, since it also sets up Harrigast. So yeah, definitely a bit of an awkward setup here with Blood Moon and Labyrinth. A Ragavan gets countered by Chalice, so that doesn't do anything. Alright, so a land off the top here. Stone Rain, alright. I guess I could still pitch Fury. Is that the plan? Because we're not too far from emerging Harrigast onto the Rabble Master either with another land. 8 minus 3 is 5. So yeah, I might have to Fury the Guide before our opponents can kill me with it, since a Lightning Bolt could also be an option, and Bombardment can burn me out as well. So I don't think I really have a choice. Suppose I should attack first. Otherwise they can shoot down a 1/1 token. Sadly, no window to emerge Harrigast with Fury in play here, which would be awesome otherwise. So take out the Guide. Opponent's gonna sack it, presumably removing my Goblin token, but they could sack Raptor to also take out Rabble Master. But token it is. And no window to cast Harrigast with Emerge here. Would have been different if it had Flash. Their opponent's still unable to do anything. from the looks of it. They have to discard to hand size, and we drew another Fury. Alright, so we're still just waiting on a land here. Tokens forced to attack. And the staring contest continues. Blood Moons, I can pitch Fury now to clear the Raptor. I don't think that's worth it. Although I might regret that decision if our opponent is stuck on one land for a couple more turns and we don't draw our lands. But we should get there soon. Chromox would also be good enough. Alright, there we go. So play this. And now I think hardcast Fury. And then I can still emerge Harrogast next turn. Their opponent can deal 1 to my face. And Rebel Master finally gets to attack. And our opponent explodes. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have no Labyrinth, no Chromox, but double Devour. So... yeah, do we still keep? We have 2 shots basically at finding Chromox or Labyrinth to set up a turn 2 Stone Rain, but then our follow-up is not that impressive either. So this might still be a mulligan. Yeah, it's a close call. I guess I'll try it just to be able to use Devour. It's going to be a Grief for starters. Pitching Necro, so mono black. So, not a matchup for Blood Moon, I'm guessing. But Stone Rain could still be effective, so that's maybe what they'll take. One of the downsides of running cards like Smashing as your land is that discard spells can take them away. Opponents having a hard time deciding, since they're probably not used to playing against this type of strategy. Yeah, in their spot I would probably go for Stone Rain, unless they're just going Dark Ritual Necro, and then they may not care about it. Takes our dragon. And is there a Dark Ritual? Reanimates. Okay, that also makes sense. So, facing a dragon on turn 1. Devour of Destiny did find an Ugin's Labyrinth. But I don't know if that's going to save me anymore. And then I guess I have to select Labyrinth once again, if I actually want it. So turn 2 Stone Rain, although I'm not sure how we're beating Harrogast. Stone Rain, the actual basic. And Skitter Beam is going to be showing up just to get in for 6 damage. Don't think that's going to be enough. Unless our opponent loses 3 more life for some reason. Dark Ritual in 2. Well, they might still go for Necro, draw a bunch of cards. Alright, so there's still hope. Our opponent does know about Den of the Bugbear, so they're probably not going to go too crazy, since we would get them for 4. Well, they're at 6, and now Skitter Beam's lethal. Opponent now reads Den of the Bugbear, realizes that they should probably stop at 5 life. So opponent draws 4, and yeah, the Skitter Beam might steal it here. That's why you never give up. Take my turn. Fury doesn't quite do it. So, did we steal the game? Or does our opponent have a removal spell like the Black March? Fatal Push doesn't do it since mana value is 5. Alright, Dark Ritual into maybe a Bowmasters. Yep, so that will save them here. They have 2 toughness, so they'll fall to 1. Super close game. And yeah, they needed to draw Dark Ritual into Bowmasters here to survive. GG's. So turn 1 Harrigast was good enough in the end. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We've got a turn 1 Chromox into Chalice. So, yeah, I'll try it. And then hopefully this is a matchup where Chalice is effective. We'll hang on to Fury. And yeah, I guess their opponent is playing with Lurrus as companion, so they should have lots of 1 and 2 drops that Chalice will counter. Uggin's Labyrinth, I guess I can hang on to that. Eruption, opponent's probably running a couple basics, so no need to play it now unless I want to play it tapped. So I'll just pass. Verdant Fetches. For a basic forest, okay, so there's a Junt deck. And an Amped Raptor, so they've got the energy package. And they hit Tribal Flames, dealing 3. So it's a Zoo deck. Rabblemaster's excellent. So I could play that, although the token just gets eaten by the Raptor. But I kinda still wanna try and hardcast Fury. So I guess there's no harm in playing the Rabblemaster. Even though I guess their opponent could remove it next turn. They may not value removing Rabblemaster when they have a Raptor on defense. Eruption is also a way for Rabblemaster to attack past opposing blockers. I think I should still just play it tapped here. Save myself 3 damage. Yeah, we would have preferred that Raptor hit a 1-drop that Chalice would have stopped. They are playing, of course, a white as well to enable their domain synergies.
Where shall we hunt today?
Fury's looking good. While Nacatl's not happening. So we can clear all of the opponent's creatures now. No real upside to pitching this, although I guess next turn I could return it to hand. So maybe it's still fine if I need to hardcast another copy. And the damage should happen at the same time, so there's no Ajani transformation happening. And we get to smash, and this is a pretty fast clock now. Although opponent could have more Tribal Flames to interact. Kawu's not bad either. 4/4. Ooh, how about the Erupting Nullkite? So emerge 8 mana. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I can sack a Rabblemaster to put it in play. And then draw 3. I guess I could attack first, and then what happens? Opponent probably trades for Rabblemaster. And then I can still emerge this onto Fury. Yeah, that's alright. So the trade happens. and I would like to draw 3. Okay, and then next, I guess we could cast the Eruption still. Probably more afraid of the white mana, since they could cast more Janis, which can block. And they might have, I guess with Lurrus as companion, they're not playing Leyline Binding, but they could have Swords to Plowshares. Don't know if they have a basic Plains. They don't. They just had the one basic Forest, as it turns out. Alright, and then I guess I might hang on to the Monk, just play Labyrinth for now. Could also get my Devourer of Destiny back. Opponent can still cast a Breakout, which I guess is also a way around Chalice, if they found a 1-drop. But yeah, our flying Eldrazi Dragon's gonna close out the game for us. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have Devourer with Labyrinth, so we're potentially looking at a turn 2 Fable or Rabblemaster with Fury as removal. Yeah, and then depending on the matchup, we can look for a land disruption or additional threats. So, opponent on what looks to be a blue-black version of the Charbelcher deck. So these are all great options. Chromox would let me play turn 1 Rabblemaster, turn 2 Rabblemaster, that adds up. Or we could Blood Moon to shut down the opponent's colored mana. Although their lands will enter untapped, so they're holding Charbelcher, that could be bad. I kinda like just going for Chromox here. Chalice stops Dark Ritual, and that's about it. So, a Labyrinth, exile Devourer. Chromox, pitch. At this point, I mean, it's possible Fury can still be useful if her opponent goes with a Balustrade Spy and gets a bunch of creatures back. So maybe Smashing goes away. And I'll start with Rabblemaster for immediate pressure. And we can play another one. This is also a Goblin, so that has good synergy. But our opponent could just go Dark Ritual into Charbelcher and next turn win the game. And yep, there's the Dark Ritual. Looks like they have the Balustrade Spy instead. So opponent's gonna have a bunch of 3/3 zombies in play, but Fury can deal with the 3/1s and 1/1s. So, is there a chance we survive this? I guess it depends how many zombies they have in hand. But it looks like triple price Amalgam's coming back, so they did have 1 in hand at least. Opponent is drawing 1 card, so they only normally have 2 draw steps left. Unless they have a way to discard their... I didn't get a peek if it was a Darksteel Colossus or Progenitus. So yeah, either way, Fury gets rid of Silversmote Ghoul. And then Rabblemaster can stay back to block. And then we might still die here, sadly. Because yeah, the Goblin tokens are forced to attack. Do not want to play another Rabblemaster first main phase, because then I'm forced to attack with the first one. So it's either second main Rabblemaster, or probably better to play Fable. So we'll exile a Rabblemaster to our Fury. So I have 2 blockers. I guess I technically survive here. And then next turn our opponent's drawing from an empty library. Cast an Archamoeba. So if they had 1 more Amalgam in their library, we would have died. And yeah, our opponent explodes. Wow, turn 2 Balustrade Spy was not good enough. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Definitely have a keeper. Can turn 2 Blood Moon at the very least. got Fury as removal. Could draw our Ugin's Labyrinth to cast a Blood Moon on turn 1. Opponent taking some mulligans, so more likely to be a combo deck. So if they have an explosive start, our turn 2 Blood Moon could be too slow. But our opponent's down to 3 cards. Awakening points towards Charbelcher. So sadly drew our Devourer a turn late. Alright, I think we still Blood Moon, so Dark Ritual's no longer a concern. And then next turn I can Fable to start discarding some of these expensive spells. And then pitch. I guess I don't really need Fury in this matchup. Unless our opponent plays the Balustrade Spy, then Fury is a good way to clean up some of the 1 toughness creatures. But yeah, if we just Blood Moon here, they're gonna have a hard time casting it in the first place. Unless they have their own Chrome Mox that can fix for black. Okay, now then enters untapped thanks to Blood Moon, so that's pretty neat. Play Fable. And then we'll be discarding at the very least a Devourer. Chalice. Does Chalice do anything for me? I could play Chalice on 0 to stop Chrome Mox as an out. Still worried about our opponent hard casting a Charbelcher and activating it, but that's going to take a few more turns. So I kind of like keeping the Chalice. And then I guess Skitter Beam. We can still cast second main if I don't draw land. But we did, and Eruption I'm just going to cast. So yeah, Chalice on 0 to stop the opponent's Chrome Mox. And then Eruption, hit a land just so we can take them off a potential hardcast Charbelcher. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. I could technically Stone Rain on turn 1, although it's gonna use up basically all of my resources. And then we don't have an amazing follow-up. And turn 1 Stone Rain, not quite as brutal as turn 1 Blood Moon could be. Opponent's not playing Companion. So, yeah, not entirely sure if this is good enough. Just because my follow-up to a Stone Rain's not that great. Yeah, this might be a mulligan. This seems a bit more exciting. I can still Stone Rain on turn 1 actually, thanks to both Labyrinth and Chrome Mox. And then Fable as a follow-up, so I can reveal the Devourer, and then take it from there. Okay, so opponents with Ruins could imply a mono-blue version of Charbelcher. So with that in mind, Stone Rain is good, Eruption is just as good and can also function as a land for us. So I guess that's the pick. And then Labyrinth, exile Devourer. Chrome Mox, not gonna need Fury. And let's just, I guess Stone Rain is fine. Could also take the opportunity to get Fable going and then next turn start Stone Raining, which I also don't hate. Just to kind of snowball the early advantage from our Shaman. Although now we're potentially walking into mana drain territory, which we could have maybe avoided with turn 1 Stone Rain. Opponent plays a Thunder Trap Trainer instead. So they're likely running the free counterspell that requires them to sacrifice a creature as an additional cost. Battalion can probably go. Just keep the land destruction package. So we'll attack first. And then I'll attempt to Stone Rain here. That resolves. Okay, so we can try and keep the opponent's mana under control. Opponent's gonna have their own Chrome Mox to speed things up. But if they're on a mono blue build, they won't have access to Dark Ritual. Another trainer. So now they could double block my Shaman as well. Although if we Eruption before attacking, then I can prevent them from blocking. So that seems worth a try. Looks like they maybe drew into the counterspell for turn. But then if they have to sack a trainer, the Shaman can once again attack. Their opponent lets it happen. Don't think they'll have a basic to find. And yeah, opponent's unable to block. So we've got a decent amount of mana lined up. Although if I put the Devour back in hand, I'm missing colorless mana to cast it. Alright, our opponent is clearly playing black since they have Agadim. And then now Ritual can still ramp out Charbelcher. So they might still have their counterspell in hand now. So what are my options? Eruption was not a bad top deck, but if they counter it, then next turn they could just go land, activate Charbelcher, win the game. Can still activate Reflection on the Shaman. And then maybe attack, see if they want to double block, but that doesn't stop the fact that they can still counter. So I guess we'll just go for it and see what happens. But yeah, I assume they drew the counterspell last turn, didn't feel the need to go for it since they had the Ritual to ramp out Charbelcher, but now they'll probably counter just so they can still win with Charbelcher next turn, assuming they have a land left. Yep, and there's a Flare of Denial. So we could be dead. Bones at 5. And Charbelcher is gonna get us. Chromox can do the honors, so they don't have to take 3 damage. Alright, GG's. Yeah, Flare of Denial, definitely a nice addition to this archetype. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have both Labyrinth and Chromox, so we can actually play a turn 1 Stone Rain, although the opponent's not going to have a land in play, so turn 1 Fable instead looks good. Or we can play a Chalice to stop all 1-drops. So lots of great options, definitely keeping. So yeah, maybe turn 1 Chalice, turn 2 Fable is good enough. Just to stop the opponent's 1-drops. And then I can hang on to Chromox to postpone that decision. Opponent's red-black, played Blood Crypt untapped, so strange given the Chalice of the Void in play. So yeah, I guess Stone Rain looks good. Can just play this as a land, although I might want to keep this as an answer to the opponent's land. Although they don't give me the vibe of being a Charbelcher deck, so they will probably have at least 1 basic to search up. So then I guess the Eruption is not going to be super effective. Now let's just Stone Rain. And then next turn I can play the Fable. I see opponent wanted to Swamp Cycle the Troll, that makes more sense. Now they cannot reanimate the Troll because of Chalice. So now they play their land tapped. Play Fable. I think I still play the Smashing as a land, since we might want to get up to 5 to hardcast some of our spells. And then just ditch the Chromox now. Reunion. Discarding double Shark. So that's what they're trying to set up. So Labyrinth can go, Chromox can go. Because yeah, Chalice just counters their Shark now. And now Stone Rain, go for Blood Crypt. And can almost cast another 3-drop, I guess 1 mana short. So that's where an extra mana from Chromox could have helped. But then I guess we wouldn't have had enough cards in hand in the first place. I think I still like Stone Raining here. And then next turn we can maybe double spell. Although it looks like Blood Moon's only gonna shut down half of the opponent's deck. Yeah, turn 1 Chalice is no joke. Opponent's got a discard to hand size. Gets rid of a Detective's Phoenix. And we drew Fury. Alright, not bad. So we'll attack. Opponent could have their own Fury, I suppose, to answer both of my goblins next turn. Still happy to play another Fable. And don't really see a reason to Blood Moon. Unless their opponent were to draw a black source and have a 2-mana black card they need to cast. But don't think there's too many of those. Maybe a Bowmasters. So if they bestow the Phoenix, it's still a 3-mana card, so it does get around Chalice. Yeah, sometimes it's difficult to gauge how effective a Chalice is being in a certain matchup, because we don't have any discard spells to check out the opponent's hand. But yeah, the turn 1 Chalice might have just won us the game by itself. At some point we could also return the Battalion back to our hand and cast it for 5 mana. So that's maybe a play we can make next turn. Opponents might have given up as we draw another Blood Moon. Those can go. Could Stone Rain their only mountain? Yeah, that's probably the play. And then if I pick up Battalion, I can cast it next turn to close it out. That seems good enough. Don't really want to sacrifice my Reflection to Harrogast. Fury also incredibly powerful alongside the Reflection, as we can deal 4 damage when we copy it as well. But yeah, it looks like our opponent has left the game a while ago. Alright, sweet. So we got to see our monored prison deck in action. And yeah, some games where you can immediately lock the opponent down with an early Chalice or Blood Moon can be incredibly effective. Other times the opponent maybe gets an early Ragavan in play that can make more treasure, and then we're just gonna fall behind without really stopping the opponent's plan. So it is a bit hit and miss, but overall I've been having a good time playing the deck with a positive win rate, especially since there's so many Charbelcher decks out there that we can punish with our land destruction. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.